Novus, the new voice. Vox Novus, the new dimension. Vox Novus, thought and movement leaders who will share from their experience and offer tools to help us navigate our rapidly changing world. My name is Victor Fuhrman. Welcome to Vox Novus, the new voice. Are there secrets and cover-ups that NASA and the United States government do not want the public to know? My guest this week on Vox Novus, Mary A. Joyce, has been researching and accumulating evidence of UFOs, UAPs, and signs that we are not alone in the universe since 2008. She is editor and main researcher for the website skyshipsovercachers.com, and she joins me this week to share her findings and latest book, Spy in the Sky: Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. Please join me in welcoming back to Vox Novus, Mary Joyce. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, it's always good to hear you, Victor.
Mary, it's been 3 years since the last time you were on. There's been a lot of differences in our world since October of 2019, as we all know. So for our listeners meeting you for the first time, let's start with your background and path. You've had many successful and diversified careers. How did this all start for you?
I guess the things that stand out is I've worked for two major metropolitan newspapers, the Orlando Sentinel in Florida and the Oakland Press in Michigan. And I've also worked for a Fortune 100 company working on children's talking books. And I worked with the artists and traveled around the country and worked with the printers. And I've done political campaigns. I did some teaching in there. I'm old enough to have collected quite a few experiences. I've run political campaigns.
Absolutely. And just out of curiosity, where are you from originally?
Most of my childhood was in Minnesota.
Okay.
And so I've lived in Minnesota, Montana, and Michigan growing up. And then my jobs have taken me from Texas to Florida to Indiana and then flying around to other cities.
And how did you wind up in Cachers?
I love the mountains. It was a very deliberate move.
And why Cachers in particular?
Well, actually, I live about 40 minutes from that, from Cachers itself, but I'm here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And from my house, I can look up at the Blue Ridge, and I have mountains all around me, and I just love the mountains.
I do too. I love that. I visited that area many years ago, and I love that area. Yeah, and it's wonderful that you have that opportunity to live there and see it every day.
And what's surprising is, of course, I did not know this, but when I moved to this area, it became just a hotbed of really interesting topics because we have, I've done a book on most of these, the Cherokee Little People, we have Bigfoot, we have underground bases. And then I've, done quite different things. And the latest one, we will talk about it when you're ready.
Absolutely. Now, when did you first develop an interest in anomalous and unusual phenomenon?
When I was living in Florida, I lived on Cocoa Beach, right between Patrick Air Force Base and the Kennedy Space Center, and got to meet NASA people. I got to meet an astronaut and got to make connections that way. I saw more UFO activity in Florida than I have personally seen here in North Carolina, but there are a lot of sightings in this area. It's just easier to see them when the land is open in Florida. And here in the mountains, you have to be in the right spot to see things.
And how many sightings did you have when you were in Florida?
I don't know if I can count, if I've counted them that way, but I did do lecturing for a while, and the title was UFOs over Florida. And at that time, we were seeing lots of them over nuclear bases, military bases, out over the ocean, at the Space Center, power plants. And so there seemed to be a real commonality with the sightings in Florida.
Now, in addition to the sightings, did you have any other anomalous experiences?
I have not had one of those crazy things of being abducted or any face-to-face with an ET. So mine would be totally seeing objects flying in the sky.
Tell us about skyships over Cashers and how it came to be.
At the time, there was a gal that I became friends with, and she made me aware of how many UFOs were being seen over Cashers. Now, Cashers is a mountaintop town about 40 minutes from where I actually live. And there were so many sightings that we just started a little website just to report on those. Well, that website has just grown in every possible direction, and anything that doesn't fit in natural media, I shouldn't say natural media, but ordinary media, we cover it on this website.
And for our listeners, I subscribe to Skyships Over Cashers. It is an amazing site. Mary does an incredible job, and I highly recommend that everyone who's listening to this show sign up to get the updates and the newsletters and everything she sends out, because the stuff that she shares is phenomenal. So you often share coordinates to images on Mars featured on Google Earth Pro. This has become a popular tool, hasn't it?
It certainly has for me. And in the book that I've just done, which is called, the short title is Spy in the Sky. The long title is Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. And Google Earth has been my tool for many of those discoveries. And these discoveries have been made over a number of years. And my purpose is to just enlighten people about what's really going on. And so I have provided the coordinates. So anybody who has Google Earth can take those coordinates and go find them find the sites for themselves. And this is important because we have so many annoying people who like to use, computer trickery to create images that aren't real. And so when people can go and find things for themselves, then they know that it's real.
Before we get into the new book, let's talk a little bit more about the North Mountains and the Cashers area. Has there been recent activity up there?
Well, I actually don't report on it as much as we used to, because when you just keep seeing, various glowing lights in the sky, even if they spin around and do, fantastic things, that becomes boring after a while. And, well, it does, and I just don't want to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. And so we have found more interesting things by catching sightings from the International Space Station. That station, the space station, has a webcam, or I don't know what they call it, but they have a video live camera feed that anybody can tune into. And if you're lucky enough, you can sometimes catch something. And I have the good fortune of having made a connection with a gal who, at too young an age, had a stroke. And for a while, she was bedridden. She's now pretty nimble. But she started really amusing herself by using the satellite feed from the camera, or from the space center, and she was catching some really good stuff. So she's the one that really got me started on that, and I probably don't have the patience to sit there and watch it as much as she's able to do. And so she gets credit for an awful lot of the really neat things that we're finding that go buzzing by the space station. And people would be surprised at how frequently UFOs are being seen from there.
Now, I've seen those, and I've also seen NASA people and others saying, well, it's space debris. We have a lot of space junk flying by. This stuff can't be space junk, can it?
There is a lot of space junk. I sometimes wonder if it's going to land on somebody and not, kill them. But no, these things do unusual things. And they're not stars either, because they move in a different direction. No, it's just quite distinct on some of these. It clearly is not to be blown away. And I've gotten photos that are in the book of big, humongous UFOs that are seen around the sun. Now, I have gone on the NASA websites, and they have tried to blow these away as just, I don't know, a comet going through the air or something like that. Well, we've got pictures where, you zoom in and you can see that they are huge and that they are metallic. And they're not shaped like what I would call a traditional UFO. One, for example, looks like an extension cord where it goes out in sections. And I can only compare it to something like looking at the detail of a silver flute. A flute has a lot of different keys and indentations and very distinct mechanical parts to it. And this thing has that kind of detail. And all of these UFOs that are being seen around the sun are bigger than Jupiter. And Jupiter is our largest planet in our galaxy. Some of them are bigger than the sun itself, which is just totally mind-boggling.
And some of these issues appear to show what looks like some type of a tendril or probe, which takes energy from the sun into the craft.
Yeah, there's one where it's like a ball and it has like an umbilical cord attached to the sun, and it stayed there for a couple of days. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
And it did. It looked like it was taking in energy from the sun.
That would be interesting, that if these craft, these UFOs, were using the sun as a source of energy, and perhaps a cautionary tale for us that perhaps we need to start looking at technology to do the same to solve our energy crisis on this planet.
Yes, we certainly do. Pollution is truly a real problem. I just saw something real recently. I'm going to explore it more, but they've made real headway using hydrogen as a source of fuel for vehicles. You can get hydrogen from water, so
Yes.
you get I guess you get a vapor for an exhaust. So it is not detrimental at all, and we need to see more technology developed in that direction.
Absolutely. Now, you use the term UFO. I use the term UFO, but a certain government agency has developed the term UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. What do you think that's about?
Um, well, I have two. I'm going to stick with UFO. All right. But there are things out there, like there's pictures in the book of things that don't look like any kind of a vehicle that have been seen by the astronauts out in deep space. And they have organic looks, like one kind of almost looks like it could have been a tropical fish. So in a sense, they're right that some of these things are a phenomenon, yeah. But I'm going to stick with UFO because I think we're just getting people confused. And another term that people started to use was one for submersible UFOs. I can't remember what the letters were, like US, I don't know.
USO,
USO, yeah.
unidentified submersible object.
Well, these UFOs they can go into the water, they can go into the air. There's no problem. It's the same thing. So the UFOs you're seeing under the water are the same UFOs you see fly out into the sky. And, we don't know who they belong to, so that makes them unidentified. And I think we ought to keep things simple.
I think UAP is kind of a marketing ploy to diffuse the term UFO.
That has certainly crossed my mind. I do think that's a possibility.
A lot has changed since we last spoke in 2019, including the release of previously classified UFO reports and past May's first congressional hearing on UFO sightings in more than 50 years. From your research, is this just the tip of the iceberg?
You mean these, I assume you're referring to these radar images of a little tic-tac UFO in the...
That and the congressional hearing and these little bits and pieces that they're letting out.
I think that they only give out what they are kind of forced to give out. So if there becomes so much pressure, then they will provide a little bit more information. But when I was using Google Earth to explore Mars, I found absolute evidence that we're up there. I mean, and other information backs that up too. So there's like two space programs. There's the one which really seems to be not too much improved from 50 years ago. And with that, we're going to the moon tomorrow. But somehow we have astronauts that are getting to Mars. And it was really interesting. And again, I have this in the book. The man who was in charge of Israel's security space program. And I'll probably mutilate his name, but it was Hayam Ashid. And
Yes.
he had that job for nearly 30 years, had his impeccable reputation. And he decided just to come clean. And in December of 2020, he decided to go public, and he made a statement that was printed in the Jerusalem Post, which is a highly regarded newspaper. And I'm just going to quote two lines from his statement that really stand out. One is, there's an agreement between the US government and the aliens. That's one. Second one, there's an underground base in the depths of Mars where their representatives are, and also our American astronauts. And then I found evidence of things that are clearly contemporary that are on Mars right now.
And we're going to talk about those a little bit later, but let's get back to what he just said. He said that we have an intergalactic conference, meeting of the minds, us and them. What do you think about that?
I had this idea that that was the case a long, long time ago. Many years ago, I think I did some stories on people who had been abducted, and they would talk about the ETs, participating, but then they would see like military people in the background. So for years now, I've been very inclined to think that there was some kind of cooperative agreement between our military and ETs.
Perhaps something that started after Roswell or at the same time?
I don't know if it started right at Roswell or not. I really don't know how to answer that one, but it wasn't too long after that it became clear that, there was more going on than anybody was admitting.
You've written several books, and the latest one, as we shared, is Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. This is a magnificent book. It's 8.5 by 11. It is chock full of photographs. What inspired that book?
It started from the research and discoveries that I made while simply trying to get information out on our website, skyshipsovercashers.com. And it began to pile up, and I wasn't seeing this kind of information anywhere else. And I thought, this is something the public really needs to know. They have a right to know. And so that was really the impetus for it. I also want to point out that among my different kinds of credentials, I'm also trained as a graphic artist. And the visual part is so important. And this latest book, there's only 3 pages that don't have photographs, and almost all of the photographs are full color, because it's like I'm presenting evidence like in a court case. Hey, this is really happening. Here is an example. Here you can see it for yourself. And so for people who don't like to read, but they want to learn a lot, this is a great book. It's not one of those, well, a lot of people have stacks of books. They think, oh, that's a great title, I got to read that. But it's only written words, and the pile of books stacks up. Well, this one you can pick up, and anybody can get through it in a very short amount of time because it is so visual and the evidence is there.
How long has this been in the making?
Well, I don't know how to answer that because I can't answer that. I can't answer that. I was being interviewed by a guy, and we were talking about something else, and he just kind of casually said, well, what's your next project? And he referred to something I'd been doing. And I thought, he's right. I really need to get off my butt and do that. So I took a month where I did nothing but put this information together. I was at my computer so long that my shoulder ached from using the mouse. And that's really how it started. But collecting the information wasn't done with the intention of doing a book. It's just the information became so unique that I felt like I needed to share it.
And we're going to be talking more about Spy in the Sky in our second segment, but just give our listeners a taste of the previous books that you've written.
Again, because I live here in the mountains of North Carolina, I've been inspired to do a number of things. I've done one on Bigfoot. It's called Bigfoot Beyond the Footprints. And I did it's quite different than most Bigfoot books because it shows the human side of Bigfoot. They have families, they have language, they have a whole lot of things that make them more like us than we realize. In fact, I sometimes refer to them as our distant cousins. And among the Native Americans, they refer to them as a clan of people. And so I just wanted to get away from this idea that they're just monsters, which is the way they've been portrayed so often. So that's the gist of that book. And another book is Cherokee Little People Were Real. And I went from, I never heard of Cherokee Little People till I moved to these mountains. And when I first heard about them, I thought, well, that just sounds like, Indian folk tales. And one day, an elderly man who had a great reputation, he had been a World War II hero, he'd been a pastor for more than 40 years. And he said, no, they're real. And he, as a young man, had been involved in some of the early construction at Western Carolina University, which is very close to where I live. And he said, when they were digging what was supposed to be virgin soil, they would run into these little tunnels. And the tunnels were square cut with an arch top and about 2.5 feet across and maybe 3.5, no more, about 3.5 feet tall, maybe 4 at the most. And everywhere that they were digging, whether it be a sewage line or a building foundation, they were finding these little tunnels. And they also found a little skeleton. And one of the professors kept the skull on his desk, sort of like a conversation piece for a long time. And an English teacher, I think at the high school level, came by and picked it up and said, this is not a child's skull, because he was thinking it was a child's skull from an Indian mound. And she said, because it has all its wisdom teeth. And of course, you have to be 18, 19, 20, 21 to have wisdom teeth. So he introduced me to a lot of people that I never would have met on my own. And they were all old timers. I think just about all of them have died since I've done the interviews. And I just wanted to preserve the information. And initially, I just prepared things to give to the local museums. And then I kept doing more and more research, and it became a book.
Wonderful. My guest, Mary Joyce, her latest book, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. Mary, please tell our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you.
If you go to the website, and it's easy to spell except for the last word, Sky Ships Over Cashers. Cashers is the name of a town here at the top of a mountain, but it's spelled just like a cashier at a grocery store. And you can find all sorts of information on that website. As far as the books, they're all being carried by Amazon.
And we'll be back with more of Mary after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
Hey, you got this. Just breathe. Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah,
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week is Mary Joyce. Her new book, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. Mary, at the end of the last segment, you were mentioning the other books you've written. You had two more to mention.
Yes, I mentioned the one about Bigfoot Beyond the Footprints, and I mentioned Cherokee Little People Were Real. Another one is Underground Military Bases Hidden in North Carolina Mountains. And the reason I did that book is because you hear about underground bases in the western part of this country, but the ones on this side of the continent aren't that well known, and I hadn't seen anything done about those in this state. And so that's what that one's about. And the last one is like a category unto itself. It's tangible evidence of Jesus left behind for us to find. And it's evidence from archaeologists, from all sorts of different kinds of researchers. And all of my books are visual. I don't have just written words. They're all in an 8.5 by 11 format, and there's lots of visuals to go with all of them.
As we mentioned, Spy in the Sky includes a series of amazing photos with visual evidence from Mars, the Moon, the Antarctic, Earth's ocean floors, NASA missions, and around our sun, in addition to Google Earth. How are these images accessed?
The ones from that are the things that have been seen in deep space, the things that have been seen around the sun, are NASA photos. But there's this wonderful man that contacted me from the Netherlands, and he was able to take these original NASA photos, which are in the book, but then he gets rid of the debris and the interference, and he zooms in on it. And so you can see just detail like you would never, ever imagine. We found two of them that we call flying hotels. One we named the Flying Phoenix, and the other one we named the Flying Isis Hotel. And they look like wing structures, but they're like very like a condo, except they're shaped like a flying device. And the detail is incredible. Another one I call the Lego rocket, because it has the traditional shape of a rocket that a kid might draw, made out of clear block structures. And so these do not fit the image that we have of UFOs based on the things we see right here around that fly around the Earth. These are quite unique in their structure.
I remember getting very excited by images of the Cydonia region of Mars from the Viking missions in 1976, later shared by Richard Hoagland as the face on Mars and an adjacent pyramid. His work was controversial, but the photos you share in Spy in the Sky show formations and structures, including entrances, that defy natural explanation. What has this shown to you?
I found those entrances incredibly interesting. I think I first learned about them at maybe 5-7 years ago, and I've seen just like one or two, and they look like warehouse entrances. They're very square cut. But one day I played with Google Earth in a different way. Normally, I go from like east to west or west to east as you go around the planet. I tipped it, and so I was circling from north to south pole. And I discovered a line of 27 entrances, all square cut, ranging, and I'm giving you round figures, but ranging in width from 400 to 1,000 feet. And they all are pretty much looking the same, except when you look at them closely, the detail around opening of each one is just slightly different, but they're all in a line and they're spread out over 16 miles. They're not anything ancient. It looks like they, any plane that we have could fly into those very, very easily.
Sort of like what Professor Ashed was talking about.
Yeah. And in the book, I have his statement and his picture, and immediately go into the entrances on Mars, because those entrances support his idea or his statement. And so I flow from one subject to the other, essentially supporting what he said. But it's not the only thing. I also found two, they look like habitats. They look like contained living spaces. And I think I found them about 5 years apart. The first one I found was in the northern hemisphere, and it was about 700 feet in length. The second one I found in the southern hemisphere, at least 5 years later. It probably was built later, because it is literally 10 times the size of the first one. It's about 7,000 feet in length. And the wonderful Google Earth has tools that you can use so you can actually measure these things.
Give us an example of how you do that for those who are not familiar with Google Earth.
Up at the top of the screen when you go to Google Earth, and Google Earth Pro is the best one, there's little logos or little icons. And there's one that looks like a tiny ruler, and you can tap on that, and then you can put down a point, and then you can stretch a line as far as you want to go, and it will give you the length in miles or feet or kilometers or kilometers or whatever measurement you want to use. And it is a very, very helpful tool.
So Google gives us a measuring device for Mars.
and you can do that on the Earth. You can do that on the Moon. You can do it on Mars. Those are the 3 locations where Google has satellites that can feed this information to us.
Now, in addition to the entrances that look like perhaps storage facility entrances or warehouse entrances, and those structures that you described as perhaps habitats, anything else on Mars?
Let's see. There was I found a track that looks like a railroad track, and it goes a straight line. It goes across basically flat land. It goes through 2 craters, and then there is it looks like a car that's on this track, and I measured that, and I think it's about 200 feet in length. So it's not a small thing. That's one of the things. Another thing which I found early on was what I called a rash on Mars. I thought, what is that? It really looked like a red rash. And when I zoomed in on it, they became the individual piece. What do you call an individual rash? I don't have a word for that. But anyhow, when I zoomed in on them, they looked like metal tubular shaped objects. And, part of the point of the book is not only to show you what's there, but to show you how the government is trying to hide it from us. Because some of these things, after I posted them on the website, they were quickly changed. And this particular rash which looked like, rounded metal structures, got severely blurred out.
You might describe them almost looking like worms.
You mean after they messed with them?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Now, for our listeners who are not familiar with the concept, we're talking about shapes, geometric shapes that do not occur in nature. They're not natural. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And what explanation has been offered by anyone as to how these things got there?
Nobody in an official capacity has given me any answers. They're probably not at all pleased that I'm exposing this, but I'm tired of them keeping secrets from everybody.
So other than Professor Chaim Ashed, no one has actually come out and said anything about this?
Well, some people will say things off the record, and I'm sure if you dig deep enough, some other people have come forth and said things. I know they have. But these are things that I have been able to absolutely confirm. And with my newspaper background, I know how important it is to make sure that what you're presenting is correct. And so even though I might have a really strong inkling from so-and-so that this might be the case, that doesn't hold up very well. So I don't present that kind of information.
Now, you've described some of these as looking more recent, some of these as looking older, which leads to the question, do you think, based upon your research, and I know this is an opinion question, we have no way of really finding this out at this point, but do you think that Mars was once a thriving planet?
Yes, and I've done an article. Well, let me back up here. One of the astronauts that I met when I lived on Cocoa Beach, his name was Clark McClellan, and he became friends with Werner von Braun. They both were obviously in the space program. They worked on, I think it was a Saturn mission together. And when Van Braun would go to the Kennedy Space Center, he and Clark McClellan would find ways that they could meet out at the hotel away from everybody else around the pool or out by the ocean. And they would just talk about the things they shared in common, like, deep space and space travel and UFOs. And he was very open with Clark. And Clark, in turn, was open first, with me, but more so in a book that was published after his death. And von Braun said that, there had been a civilization and on Mars, and that he said people would discover the evidence of it. There have been other stories that I've done where people whose names are probably not going to come to me right now, people who have like major science backgrounds, and they have concluded that there was a major disaster. Some think it was an atomic explosion of some sort, or there's also the theory that the astrobelt was a planet and it blew up, and when it blew up, it destroyed the atmosphere on Mars. But yes, I absolutely believe that at one time there was a striving, very developed civilization there, and it was destroyed. And when people make jokes about people being from Mars, that may actually be the case, because they, according to many of these people who seem to know more than I do, they had advanced space travel. And when things were really bad, escapes were made to Earth, which would be the nearest place where they could survive. And, it sounds like sci-fi stuff, but sci-fi is coming true.
And one of the things that they found recently on the rovers doing chemical analysis is the presence of an element which is only created after the detonation of a nuclear weapon.
And it's that kind of evidence that really makes those kind of theories quite believable.
The amount that they found in these analyses was 2.5 times the amount that has been found on Earth at sites that were used for nuclear testing, and also in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
I did not know those statistics. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Repeat that again.
Yes, it is 2.5 times the concentration of this element. I can't remember the exact name. It's xenon, one of the numbers with it. I can't remember what it is. But if you look at the places where atomic weapons were detonated on the Earth, including the test centers in the Pacific and the test centers in the southwestern United States, and then also the aftermath of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the level of that element is 2.5 times higher on Mars than it was on Earth.
That's incredible. That is really incredible.
If you think about the fact that those detonations must have occurred thousands and thousands of years ago.
And it's still that intense.
This was one major calamity.
Right.
And it doesn't happen naturally.
No.
That element does not occur. Right.
Gotcha.
Does not occur naturally. It's only as the result. There are other elements that are created with the detonation of a nuclear weapon, but that element specifically has been found on Mars.
While we're doing theories, those entrances that we mentioned just real shortly ago, I think those are entrances that vehicles can fly into. So when I say like a warehouse entrance, perhaps it's more like a airliner or aircraft
A
entrance.
hangar, like a hangar.
Yeah, more like a hangar.
Yeah, absolutely. You had mentioned Werner von Braun, who came to the United States after World War II as part of Operation Paperclip, one of many scientists who had formerly been with the Nazis and came here. And to his credit, von Braun did a lot of wonderful work when he was here. Did he talk at all and mention to your friend about the program that the Germans had to build what would be comparable to a UFO?
That's actually pretty well known now. And there was a major thing in UFO history where UFOs were flying over Washington, D.C. I think it was 1952. And through him, it was learned that those were the earliest UFO craft or spacecraft that the Germans had built. And he said that the Germans worked in tandem with aliens from Aldebaran. And so some of this knowledge was coming from off planet. And that's why they were developing transportation systems that were so advanced from anything we had in the US.
Absolutely. Do you think we have them, that we've built craft of this nature?
I don't think we have top of the line craft, but I think many of the things that we see that act like UFOs are indeed man-made. And the ones I'm always the most suspicious of are the ones that are triangular shaped. Now, I'm not going to say that giant ones like the one that appeared over Arizona, they're probably not ours. But most of the triangular shaped ones are man-made. And on the website at some point, I have posted photos that have come out of, the secret places that show actually the diagrams of some of these vehicles before they were even constructed.
My guest is Mary Joyce. Her new book, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. We'll be back with more of Mary after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Look out, world, we're getting strong. The future's here and we belong. She can step, she can do more. Like build a rocket and watch it soar. Or clean the oceans and make the world a better place. Oh, she can step, so can you. Find a cure, invent something new. There's no challenge in the world that she can't face. She can STEM.
Learn more at She Can STEM. A message brought to you by the Ad Council.
Back on Vox Novus, my guest this week is Mary Joyce. Her new book, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. Mary, tell our listeners about some of the other photos that you share in this wonderful book.
Well, I do different sections. One section is devoted to recent discoveries in Antarctica. And as you know, because of climate change, the ice in Antarctica is melting very rapidly. And there's been two of us that have really worked on this project. But since just about a year ago, we found the first of 5 cities that are being revealed that have been buried beneath the ice in Antarctica for an incredible number of years. Now, when I say incredible, I'm really understating it, because most scientists think that Antarctica has been covered in ice for 34 million years. So if these things are just beginning to be revealed, it's the oldest discovery on the planet. And people think that the Great Pyramid is really old. Well, it's not even 5,000 years old. Compare 5,000 to 34 million. I mean, this is just an incredible discovery. And I haven't seen, I mean, maybe people are finding it now because I've started to talk about it, but I haven't seen anything like that. And that's a part of this book also. By the way, they're spread out like cities develop today. For example, there's one city where it looks like it was formed along a river or, a curving road or something. And it becomes, even though the walls of the structures are very box-like, the boxes flow in a very organic fashion, which is the way cities develop.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I remember a movie in either the late 50s or early 60s called It Came from Outer Space. And they had found in Antarctica something frozen in the ice. And they excavated it, and it turned out to be not only a UFO, but its pilot, its occupant, who was played by James Arness as the monster. And it's funny that now, after all these years, maybe that was sort of prophetic of what we'd be finding.
Well, obviously, you were supposed to go in this direction if you were getting that kind of experience as a young person.
Absolutely. And the other aspect of it is Antarctica, its current position now, Antarctica South Pole. There's been evidence that the poles have flipped a couple of times on this planet, hasn't there?
Yes, and I hope that if it does it again, that it continues to do it gradually. And it is up to this point, it is doing it gradually. And I did a story quite a few years ago now about the Eskimos observing, the positioning of the sun and things changing. And people in that kind of a culture where they're not distracted by everything notice the changes. And so I hope that we don't have a flip, like turn it upside down. It just continues to shift gradually.
And the question that leads to, is it possible that the area that's Antarctica now, where these structures are being found, was actually in a different climate?
Absolutely. And there's evidence of that. They have found fossils that you only find in tropical forests. They have found dinosaur bones. Those two alone indicate that, it was quite different at one point.
And the other question, the serious question, is why Antarctica has sort of been a taboo place for other than the military.
Well, I'm going to tell you one story, which is really, really, really good evidence that they don't want you to know what's going on. I posted 2 entrances into Antarctica. Now I'm not on Mars now. I'm back in Antarctica, and one of them, the larger of the 2, was 300 feet across and about 100 feet at its highest point. And I believe it was the next day after I'd posted it on the website. It's like somebody poured India ink all over it so you couldn't see it. And they did it in steps. That was the first thing they did. And apparently that wasn't enough. The next thing, you could see where it had been blacked out. And there was a marking for each entrance. And they were actually labeled Hollow Earth Entrance 1, Hollow Earth Entrance 2. And I have a photo of that, which I saved. And then they eventually turn the whole thing into an ice field like it wasn't even there. That tells me that that is an active entrance where vehicles, either UFOs or planes or something, are flying in there, and they absolutely don't want people to know. And I also want people to know that there is a on your keyboard with your computer, there is a key where you can print whatever is on your screen. And if you ever find anything that looks really unusual, hit that and save it, because I have a lot of before and after pictures in the book because I hit those and saved them, and often found them gone within a day or two.
Another tip about that, if you hit the Alt button and print screen at the same time, it only shows the uppermost image. So if you have other stuff on your computer that you don't want people to see, Alt and print screen will just give you the image that you're actually looking at, the top image. So,
gee, aren't we helpful people today?
Absolutely. You also share images of the Bahamas that are revelatory. What's under the ocean there?
When I lived on Cocoa Beach, I was with a friend on the pier, just having drinks or dinner or something, and got into a conversation with a young couple who were really excited because they were divers, and they had been diving off of Vero Beach, Florida, and they had found a pyramid. And the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean is very sandy. So whenever there's a major storm, all the treasure hunters will go out to see if something is being revealed. One of the guys who worked with Mel Fisher with the Etosha find has flown over that area real low after a major storm, and he's seen the pyramid. Anyhow, I used Google Earth to find this, and I found images of two pyramids just south of Paradise Island in the Bahamas. And after I found that one, they began to cover those up with new satellite photo strips. And they put a little tiny strip right where I'd found those pyramids. So again, hitting that print button if you find something really interesting is important, because otherwise you just lose these things.
So the great question, why are some of these things being covered up by the government?
I don't know why they're covering up things that are being discovered in Antarctica in the way of ancient cities. Yes, we might have to adjust our concept of history, but I don't see why that is so devastating to anybody if we have to revise the reality of our history on this planet. Why they want to keep it a big secret that they're operating on the moon and that they've got something going on beneath the Antarctic, you and I can only guess, but they clearly don't want us to know.
In your opinion, will we ever have full disclosure? And if so, are we ready?
Will we ever have full disclosure? The disclosure is coming from your show, from things that you do. It's coming from my website. It's coming from this book. It's coming from people around the world who are getting it out to smaller audiences. And so there's this groundswell of education that's going on. That's how disclosure is being forced into reality. The government will not reveal anything more than they absolutely have to. That answers one of your questions. What was the other one?
Are we ready?
I used to say without hesitation, yes, we're ready. And I think you're ready. I hope I'm ready. But what I've seen in the last few years, I'm beginning to wonder how intelligent we really are as a species and if we really could handle it.
What about spiritual ramifications?
I think that we need to expand our understanding of God and the creative. There is an intelligent creator of something that's way beyond anything we humans can comprehend. So I don't find any of these discoveries conflicting with a belief in a higher power.
I agree with you 100%. What would you like readers to take away from Spy in the Sky?
We've just touched on some of this stuff, but at least we've given people some highlights. I want people to know truth. Now, whether it's truth about Bigfoot or it's truth about little people or truth about what's being hidden from us, that's going on all around us, that's high tech and way beyond what we are shown here on the planet itself. I think it's important that we humans have a right to know what's going on in our world.
Absolutely. This book is breathtakingly beautiful in its scope and the photographs that are shared. And if you have any interest in any of the fields that we're talking about, you have to get a copy of Mary's book, Spy in the Sky, Secrets and Cover-Ups on Earth and Beyond. Mary, one more time, please tell our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you.
The book, all of my books are available on Amazon. And my name is Mary Joyce, Mary A. Joyce. You can find it that way or find it by the book titles. The website that I do, and I update it usually about once a week, is called Skyships Over Cashers. Skyships Over, anybody can spell. Cashers is spelled like the cashier at the grocery store.
Absolutely. I remember you had to teach me that the first time I interviewed you, that it wasn't cashiers, it was cashers. So
be honest with you, if I'd known that we were going to begin to cover so many different things, I probably would have picked a different title. But you can't, once you get a title, you can't change in midstream.
What's next, Mary? The last person who asked you what's next, you produced this book. What's next?
Oh, I'm not even going to attempt to answer that one because this book just got completed in June and I'm just not ready to take on another one.
Mary, as always, a pleasure to have you join us and share all of your experiences and your wonderful work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us on Vox Novus. I'm Victor, the Voice Fuhrman. Have a wonderful week.